Hey everyone, welcome to the Leader's Edge, your path to personal and leadership growth. I'm your host, Steve Steele, alongside my co-host and partner in leadership, Ernie DeCumos. As certified speakers, coaches, and corporate facilitators, we're dedicated to bringing you powerful principles to fuel your leadership journey and personal growth. Now, whether you're an entrepreneur just starting out, a new leader taking the reins, or a seasoned pro looking to refine your skills, this show is for you. We'll be diving deep into personal growth strategies to help you strengthen your mindset and leadership abilities. But before we jump in, a huge shout out to our amazing listeners. Thank you so much for joining us each and every week. We wouldn't be here without your incredible support. Now, let's get down to business and help you unlock your full potential. Hey, Renalita, partner, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, partner. You sound so far away from me, but you are actually in the same roof as me today. How are you
That's
doing,
right.
partner?
I'm doing good. As you said, I am in the same room with you today. We don't get to do that very often. Typically, we're across the country from each other. But yes, it's a great day. I'm very, very excited about it. Partner, take a minute and tell us who's our guest today is.
It would be my great pleasure. Actually an honor to have him on the show today. Born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska, he grew up in the financial industry, but also developed a strong background in athletics, nutrition, and performance psychology. As a top ranked financial planner and Dave Ramsey's SmartVestor Pro, he brings a coaching mindset and the heart of a teacher to financial planning and investing as he strives to both empower and educate his audience to not only become better investors, but to live more intentionally and create an abundant life. He owns a boutique financial planning firm, Veritas Wealth Management, that manages $500 million dollars and serves several hundred families across the United States. In addition to finance, he regularly teaches and speaks on fitness and faith, seeing these as all important aspects of a purposeful and abundant life. He and his wife, Tiffany, also a lifelong Alaskan, have been blessed with six wonderful children. Tiffany stays busy homeschooling the kids, and the whole family is very involved in their church and local community, believing that to whom much is given, much is expected. He strives to employ his knowledge and experience to serve and enrich the lives of those around him. Everyone, please help us welcome Mr. Chad Hufford to the green room.
Hi, Chad. Good to see you today, brother.
Hey guys, it's great to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to speak into the lives of your audience and help them lead others, but also themselves toward a more abundant life.
Absolutely. We are so excited that you're here. And over the past several I guess weeks we've been planning this show, we've talked about a lot of different things. And what one of the things that we really wanted to kind of dial in today is really on mindset, because I understand that you have some really good content on high performance habits and creating that mindset. Can you kind of just go in there with this chat and kind of tell us a little bit about what that's about?
Yeah, so there's a lot of tactics and tools out there for regardless of what you're trying to accomplish, whether somebody's trying to build a better business, trying to build more financial independence, trying to have a better marriage, get in better shape. There's a lot of pathways, but where we often fail is in the execution. And it's hard to act right if you're not thinking correctly. So I think mindset is absolutely critical. And that's why we focus on high performance habits, not high performance actions. Because in a high performance action, if you only execute that spontaneously or sporadically, it's not going to give you the results that you need where habits are something you do consistently. Now, unfortunately, a lot of us have habits that actually pull away from where we want to be. They actually steal from our future selves. What we want to do is create habits that serve the future versions of us.
Oh, that is so beautiful. So you use possibly a very foreign terminology to a lot of our listeners, right? High performance habits. Habits alone itself is a little bit too hard to build. What does high performance habits look like, Chad?
Well, most of our day, a lot of people suggests that well over 50% of our decisions are actually more habitual. We do it without really thinking, and we just go through our day unintentionally going through the motions. And I'm sure we can all remember getting home one day and not really remembering
Hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
the stoplight or the turn or anything like that. We were just on autopilot. And I think too many of us wake up on accident and live our lives on autopilot. So what we're trying to do is get people to live a more intentional life by being purposeful with the habits we choose. Because our life, I think, is very much built on the quality of our habits. And those habits will evolve either by default or be created with design. So when it comes to high performance habits, we have to design those. The default habits usually aren't the types of habits that serve a better future. So being intentional and strategic about creating the habits we want in our life so it doesn't default to the habits that really most people are living by. And let's face it, if we want the results, if we want better results than what everybody else is getting, we need to put in some better inputs. And that's where high performance habits come into place. And I'll just say quickly too, this isn't doesn't take anything extraordinary. In fact, the people who find success in life aren't necessarily the people who are doing things completely different from everybody else, but they're doing consistently what most people only do occasionally.
Oh, and
Mm.
I absolutely love that because that is so powerful because that's compounding consistency, and that's over and over and over, and that grows and that builds. That's absolutely right. Now, Chad, you talk about high performance habits, and our listeners, and I like that, what you said also about just the habits that we just are doing, and we don't really realize we're doing them, and those don't really serve us that well. But high performance habits can service us much better. Now, can you give us an example of what a high performance habit would look like?
I'll give you some really simple, basic ones. So let's just look at your morning routine. A lot of people, the first thing they do when the alarm rings is they shut it off. They shut it on snooze. Now
Yeah.
we're already starting our day with a compromise. We're delaying executing. And that gives you 8 or 10 minutes less time to get ready, to maybe prepare a healthy breakfast. You're already playing the day from behind. Now, maybe you don't. Maybe you don't hit the snooze button, but you pick up your phone and you look at social media and you look at all the horrible, awful things that happened around the world while you were sleeping. Or you just get distracted by the things that really don't matter, the things outside of your control. Um, so you're up, you're awake, but you've already started to get sucked into the media or whatever it is that's taking your
Mm.
attention. It could be email. First thing you do, you open up your phone, you look at the email,
Yes.
you start worrying about work before you've even left your bed yet. So rather
Yeah.
than doing that, what if you created some stillness? What if you took some time and wrote out 3 things that you're grateful for? And just something so simple as that, not only does it keep you from getting pulled into that distraction mode, but it starts the day by thinking intentionally about what matters in your life, what's important. And while most people are so focused, and again, this is a big component of social media, so focused on what other people have that we think we want or need, gratitude allows us to reframe that and focus on the blessings already in our life rather than looking outward to see what other people have.
Oh, yes. You're speaking my language, Chad, because it's part of my morning routine. The moment I wake up in the morning, I don't write them down. I say 3 things that I am grateful for, and it sets the tone of my day, regardless of how hard it will be. I already started with being great. I already started with being grateful, right? One of the things that you are very passionate about is also explaining what intellectual obesity is. Can you
Mm.
elaborate on that for us?
Well, what I think of when I mention intellectual obesity, it's a term I kind of came up with, but what I see a lot of ambitious people doing is educating themselves and planning and gathering information, doing research, and then sitting on it. Now, most
Mhm.
people aren't they're filling their mind full of garbage. It's Netflix, it's social media, and it's just a lot of distraction. But people start shifting from that, and maybe they're listening to podcasts or this show or reading a book. They're they're bringing in and consuming good content, but they don't do anything with it. And even if you eat really healthy food, but you just sit on the couch all day, you have a very sedentary lifestyle, you're still not going to be a healthy individual. We need healthy fuel, but we also need to put that fuel to work. And I think that's very much the same with what we're studying and what we're learning. Yes, that's fuel that we need to build a better life, to create a better future. But unless we act on it, unless we take that information and apply it and infuse that into our daily habits, it's really no different than if we didn't have that information at all.
Totally. I think one of the quotes, and I don't remember who said this, knowledge is not power, it's applied knowledge, right?
Mhm.
So applying them, and I love that because I agree. I was one of those people who loves listening to podcasts, who was reading the books, but I was not applying. But results doesn't show until you actually apply the teaching.
Exactly. And I explain to people and remind myself this all the time, that education without execution is merely entertainment.
Yeah,
And
I
you know,
love
Mm,
that. I
we
love
can
that.
we can look down our noses at people that binge watch a Hulu series or Netflix because we're listening to podcasts or reading books. But is it that much better if we're not taking those things and putting them into our activities, into our lives? I mean, think of somebody who studies the heart and studies the lungs. Maybe they're even a physician. They're an expert in the cardiovascular system, but they never run, they never exercise, and they're just sitting at home filling their body full of processed food. What they know doesn't matter because what they're executing is completely opposed, completely at odds with the knowledge that they have. So knowledge is important, but we are in a world full of data, and
hmm
we are, I think, overwhelmed sometimes with data and information, and where we get lost is in the execution and application.
Oh yeah, and I can see my own life in that. When if I'm completely honest and completely transparent, I see those kind of things that creep up in my life, and I have to watch that carefully because I can see the fact that of giving a lot of information out there, gathering it in, gathering it in. But what am I doing about that once I gather it in? It's just kind of sitting in there in a file, and nothing's actually happening, right? So I think that is beautiful. What was that? What was that you said again? I love that you said. Uh,
Education without execution is merely entertainment.
I love that. That is absolutely beautiful. I think that is absolutely beautiful. That is so true, so true. So how do we get better focused? How do we become a better version of ourselves? How do we become future focused?
Well, a big part of it is being clear about what you want your future to look like. And I think a lot of times we are we're building a future without a blueprint, and nobody would buy a house that was built without a blueprint. Here in Anchorage, Alaska, I can look around and there's plenty that look like there was no plans. People were just slapping boards together. But we build our futures often without a blueprint. We have no vision for what we want that future to look like, and we have nothing to guide our decisions and our habits and our pathway connecting where we are to where we say we want to be. So it starts with a vision of the future. It's like a rough draft, a architectural rendering, if you will, of what we want our future to look like. What do we want to be doing? Who are we going to be with? What is our life going to look like? What is the type of person
Mhm,
I want to become? But then
mhm,
having a blueprint that reverse engineers that future version of ourselves to today, which allows us to do a couple things. Number one, it allows us to hold ourselves accountable. Are my current actions, are my habits, are my behaviors in alignment with where I need to be? It allows us to see if we're on track or not. But it also allows us to do is break down big goals into bite-sized
mm
chunks. Because if I tell myself, hey, in 10 years, I want to have, I want to be in this kind of shape. I want to have this much money. I want my business to look like this. That sounds like a problem for Chad in 10 years. But if I break that down into measurable moments that are about today and this week and this month, then I've got to look and see, okay, what am I doing today that serves that 10-year goal? Because it's not just future Chad's issue. I've got to work on that right now. Every day matters.
And Chad, I think that also goes to the belief system, right? Because you can't see step 32 from step one or step, you know what I'm saying? As far as a blueprint in your life, you it's hard to believe that you can reach that particular goal way out there if you're not starting from the very beginning, right?
And it can be overwhelming. And I think that's where
Yeah,
people get caught up. If part of my long-term goal is to, be back down to my college weight or something like that, and let's say I'm 80 pounds above that, that can be so overwhelming. I don't even know where to start. It's easier just to procrastinate. It's easier to do nothing
yeah,
Mhm.
because losing 80 pounds seems like such a big burden, and it can be so intimidating that we don't even start. And this is where, going back to education versus execution, sometimes then what we do is we start doing more planning and research as a means of procrastination.
Oh my goodness. I definitely agree. I'm just like
that's
listening and
powerful.
like observing
That's
everything. Okay,
powerful.
it is definitely powerful. We will need to take a quick break. Chad just introduced a very powerful phrase and something that we need to apply in our lives, high performance habits. When we return, we will dive into the blueprint of high performance habits. And with that, we will be right back to the Leader's Edge.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Leader's Edge. I'm Steve Steele with my co-host Ernie DeCumos and our special guest today, Chad Hufford. That first segment went by really quick. We talked about high-performing habits. And Chad, you gave us some good examples of what those high-performing habits are, what people do. And it's so powerful. But we also talked about becoming that future focus of yourself. But there was something we didn't cover there that I want to cover. And that is the fact that no matter what we do, it's going to take some hard work, right? And the thing is that we have to face that fact is if we're going to make some changes, there's have to be consistency and hard work. Can you tell us a little bit about?
Yeah, and that's where habits can get us off track because usually the habits that serve us the most in the future actually create some discomfort or difficulty in the moment. And if we don't have a vision for how that habit, how that decision, how that choice will serve us in the future, it can actually feel like a cost rather than an investment. And just to give you an example, somebody who is um, eating vegetables over a candy bar, right? The candy bar gives you pleasure in the moment. It costs you in the long run. And that's why it's easy to get sucked into habits that don't help us because bad habits, poor habits, unhealthy habits usually bring us some sort of momentary relief or
Mm-hmm.
pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe having a difficult conversation with a spouse or with a coworker. It's just easier to sweep that under the rug in the moment, but it costs us so much more in the long run. We have to be willing to flip that cost, to pay the price up front and reap the benefits of that investment in the future.
But Chad, how does a person actually? I mean, that's sometimes so difficult. I mean, it's easy to say, right? It's really easy to tell me that, but man, it's struggle. It's a hard. How do I get started? How do I actually do that?
Well, and this is where having that blueprint is important about taking that
Mhm.
big long-term goal, breaking it down to bite-sized chunks so it isn't absolutely overwhelming, but also sometimes we need to identify what is the next step. What is the
Mm.
smallest step that I can take towards that new and better version of me or the new and better version of my life? So if you're $100,000 in debt and you feel like you're drowning in expenses, trying to pay that off 100,000 that's overwhelming. But is
Mhm.
there one subscription that you could cancel and take that $20 a month and put it towards your student loan? Can you cut out one food from your diet that you shouldn't be doing? Can you write a note, a thank you note to a person who maybe you have conflict with and you need to start rebuilding that relation? I don't know what the thing is, but ask yourself, what is the smallest step I can take in the direction that I want to go? And it starts building momentum. And there's people that are sometimes starting to try to get in better shape. They'll do something really basic like packing their gym bag the night
Mm.
before and they put it by their front door. It does two things.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, it's
Mm-hmm.
one less thing that they have to do in the morning. So
Mm-hmm.
if they do hit their snooze button, if the kids are running late to school and they're running late, one less thing to do, and it reminds them, there's my gym bag. It's a commitment I've made to myself that I'm going to do this thing. So I hope that gives you some ideas, but it's that idea of or the principle of breaking down those difficult choices into the easiest steps. It still may not be easy. And the other thing that we need to remember is to try to keep it simple. So if you
Mm.
haven't been to the gym in 20 years, don't be doing complicated workouts.
Yeah.
Don't
Right.
try to do what the Navy SEALs do. Go walk
Right.
on a treadmill,
Right.
and
Right.
and a lot of times we add complexity to a situation to distance ourselves from the responsibility of acting. So,
Yeah.
Steve, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Why
Yeah.
don't you give me something, a goal that somebody might be working on, or something difficult that somebody's trying to accomplish, and let's see if we can unpack this in real time and look at what it would look like to start the hard work to serve ourselves in the future.
Oh, well, yeah. So I was given in my opinion, an overwhelming responsibility to take care of
This morning.
Yeah. What, Ernie? This morning?
Morning. Was it? I don't know if I'm reading your mind right now, partner, but go ahead.
No, well, this actually has to do with an overwhelming responsibility that I had to complete this, and it was a very short timeline. And I looked at that, and I'm going, "Oh my gosh, I don't know if I can accomplish that because I was so overwhelmed with it to get it done on a specific timeline. I had a lot of people involved in it, but a short amount of time to do it, and so it was. I had to break it down and assign specific responsibilities to specific people to accomplish those specific things. So I don't know if I'm on the right track here, but that was I couldn't have done. There's no way I could have done it by myself. It was an impossibility, and because I was so overwhelmed by it. Does that make sense, Chad?
Yeah, it does. But you're thinking about taking steps towards that better future. And again,
Hmm.
this is where it's hard, is because the future can be intangible. Like
Right.
Mm,
serving Chad in 10 years, or Steve in 20 years, or Ernie in 50, like that that that's not tangible. It's mushy, and it's like, okay, I haven't met the future version of me. I don't even know how hard I want to work for that person. I might not even like that person. So
Hmm.
if we had a goal, if we had something that we need to accomplish that's a ways out in the future, how do we start taking those difficult actions now, making those difficult choices,
Okay.
maybe even making ourselves uncomfortable? If you give me an example, it doesn't have to be something personal, but something that maybe somebody be
Yeah.
working on for 10 years out in the future. How do we break that down into simple, might be difficult, but
Yeah.
simple bite-sized chunks?
Okay. I think this is where I really want to write a book.
Okay.
I really do. And I think I have some ideas about what I want to write on. Okay. So help me out. Where do I go from there?
mm,
What are the so it could be something as writing a paragraph
Hmm.
about the three main points that you want your audience
Okay.
to get
One.
across.
Okay. One is I want to talk about adversity. Two, I want to talk about uh, believability. Is that a word? I'm thinking, and then maybe the third would be uh, to trust in myself to get those things done. uh, th- those are the kind of the things that I want to kind of cover because here's what I know. I know that not not everything that you do in your life you believe you can do. You have to take a step toward that, and I think your believing that you can do it is increased by each step that you take forward. Um, I think that you increase the objectivity of knowing that you can accomplish it if you move toward that goal one step at a time. And I
Okay.
believe more in myself doing it one step at a time than not seeing it as a big picture. 'Cause I don't know how I'm going to write a book. You know,
mm,
I
And writing a book is overwhelming. And I just wrote my first book last year, and I had to take my own advice in this because I had this over it seemed like this overwhelming project. I've got six kids. I'm running a business. I'm teaching a class at church. I'm trying to be a good husband and a good father, trying to stay in shape. All these, like, where am I going to find the time to write a book?
yeah.
And and I had to break it down to simple steps. So I'm just gonna give you some ideas, Steve.
yeah.
Um, give it number one, give yourself some deadlines. So I'm going to
Okay.
write a book someday. That someday we can kick that can down the road forever. Just like I want to lose weight. I want to get better shape. That's too squishy. I want to write a book by when? We have to have
Mm,
a date on there. And I'm just, let's say it's a year from now. And then you reverse engineer that. Like, what are the steps? What does it need to look like in 6 months? What does it need to
mhm,
look like in 2 weeks? What does it need to look like tomorrow? So
Hmm.
maybe today my goal is I'm going to reach out to three people that can connect me with an editor. Tomorrow it might be I'm going to spend 20 minutes writing an outline. The day after that, it
Ooh.
might be reach out to three more people that might be able to connect me with a publisher. And I'm just making this up as I go. And here's one of the things that really helped me is every day I committed to write. Sometimes it was
Mm-hmm.
garbage. Sometimes it was
Mm-hmm.
not good at all. But I wasn't worried about the outcome. I was worried about the input. So maybe it starts with 15, 20 minutes. I'm just going to write. I'm going to write about adversity today. And the day before, you give yourself a subject. So because here's what's nice. We can give ourselves assignments in the future and it feels like we're assigning somebody else. And and when you get to that, if you already kind of have that assignment that was given to you by you 24 hours ago, it's one less decision you have to make. Well, what am I going to write about? I already said I was going to write about X. And maybe you don't really want to write about X or Y or Z, but if you're assigning it the day before, you're not worried about it on a Tuesday. You're assigning that to yourself for Wednesday. And that seems a little silly, but it works. So if you're assigning yourself something and it's manageable, and we're not worried about how much you write or how good it sounds, it's 15 minutes or 20 minutes. But my goal was to write, to put in that input. Again, it'd be like if somebody was trying to get in better shape. I'm not going to worry about if I haven't been working out, I'm not going to worry about how fast I'm running or how much weight I'm lifting. I'm just worried that I spent 20 minutes walking on the treadmill or I went and
Mhm.
did 3 exercises. That's the input. So I'm making the goal small enough that it's manageable, but large enough that I can build some momentum.
Oh, I love that.
Ooh,
I love that.
yes.
I love the fact that you said that you know that you were and I wrote some of those things down. I actually did. And I like how you said that you're giving yourself a deadline. And it doesn't matter what that deadline is. It could be a short deadline, it could be a longer deadline. And I love the fact that you're every day you're committing to write. And it doesn't have to be good.
Hmm.
It just has to be something you're writing, right? Good gets better later. So, I mean, I love that. That's very encouraging, Chad. Thank you so much for that.
A lot of
Yes.
time, a lot of times we can let perfect be the enemy of progress, where we don't want to do anything till we have it all figured out. But when you're writing a book, when you're trying to build a better business, like you figure it out as you go. You have to step into the unknown and walk through the uncertainty. That's when you actually start figuring out the next steps.
Ernie is biting
Mm.
at the a bit to talk. I can see right now. Because Ernie, you just finished your book. So yeah.
I did. It obviously, I do agree with what Chad shared, setting a date and then reverse engineer from that, have a commitment of what chapter you want to finish on what date, right? So decide how many chapters do you want to write? How long is it going to take you for each chapter? What content is in there? It sounds overwhelming, but I love what James Clear said from his book, Atomic Habits. Tiny habits lead to massive results, right?
Hmm.
And
Mm,
partner consistency is something that you are very passionate about. But
yes.
Chad mentioned something that is a misconception when building high performance habits, right? That you have to have all the information in place, that you have to take these extravagant tasks or actions in order to build the habits. But you just said just start small. Chad, is there any other misconceptions in building high performance habits?
Well, just to touch on what you already just said, I think we underestimate
Mm,
the impact of small things done
Yep.
consistently. And
Absolutely.
and we make up this story that in order for me to accomplish this thing, that this first step has to be huge. Like I've got to have every chapter kind of lined out in my head. I mean, one of the things I was thinking of, Steve, that you could do, like just I'm gonna keep a list on my phone of stories about adversity and just
Hmm.
collecting those
mm,
things. I mean, there's so many things that we could do that serve that future goal. But I think people underestimate the importance of momentum and just getting started because a lot of times planning and preparing are very good disguises for procrastination. The other thing that I would want to say is uh, we overvalue motivation. We listen to motivational speakers. We maybe have
Right.
motivational music. What I found in my own life is that actions lead to motivation. I start writing, and then the ideas start coming.
I love
I
it.
I start working out, and then I start feeling engaged, and that intensity starts to build. I I start treating my wife with love, and then I feel the
Mm.
emotions of love. But a lot of times we let our emotions or motivations dictate the choices we're going to make, and we're letting the tail wag the dog. It needs to go the other way around.
Oh, that's
You
beautiful.
you start producing the right actions, the emotions and the motivations will follow. Now, some days you might wake up motivated. You're motivated to write, you're motivated to read, to work out, to all the things you want to do. But relying on motivation is like relying on a teenager's emotional stability. Like motivations are volatile. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're terrible. but
Mhm.
they don't last. But committing to an action, that's what actually builds motivation, not the other way around.
Oh, beautifully
That
said,
is,
Chad.
that's incredible. That's beautiful.
I do wanted to add something though. Uh, I have heard this a long time ago. 50% of the process is just showing up,
Hmm.
right? It's more so showing up, sitting on that in front of that computer and start doing it, and the rest will take place. So it's the hardest thing to do is to show up. I do have one last question. So okay, I wanna dive into what Steve wants to do, right? Writing the book. On days wherein you don't feel like doing it, on days when you don't have that motivation, what are the things that you remind yourself, Chad, to keep you writing on the days when on the days when you don't feel like doing it, on the days that you're so busy, the days that you're so tired, what do you do on those days to get you to write the book? But
But
hold that thought. We will need to take a quick break. Which
I was
to the
I was hoping
blueprint
you'd get
of
there.
we just jump in into the blueprint of building high performance habits. When we return, Mr. Chad Hufford will answer my questions of what are the things that he does on days when he does not have the energy, the motivation, the inspiration to write the book. With that, we will be right back to the Leader's Edge.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Leader's Edge. I'm Steve Steele with my co-host Ernie DeCumos and our special guest today, Chad Hufford. I'm going to tell you something, Chad. As we were talking in the break, this this coaching that you're giving me today about the book is so valuable to me. I mean, as I said before, if no one else hears this, I've heard it today. And I want you to know I appreciate that. Thank you so very much. But Ernie asked a really intriguing question before we went to commercial break. Ernie, you want to ask that question again?
Yes. So my question was on days when you don't have the energy, on days when you don't have the motivation, on days when you don't feel like doing, working towards whatever it is that you have set as a goal, like what Mr. Steve Steele was trying to do is to write a book, what would you advise someone? What do you do on those days, Chad?
Well, there's a couple things. One, I think, is something you have to do in advance, and that's setting up some sort of an accountability. Like for me, writing my book, it was regular meetings with my editor, where she would, okay, here's what you committed that you would have to me by this week, this month. How's your progress going? It doesn't have to be another professional. I mean, it could be a friend, but it's got to be somebody that cares enough about us to tell us the hard truths, to kick us in the rear end a little
Mm,
bit. And it's like, hey, you said you wanted this thing in the future. Right now, your actions aren't aligning with that. Let's talk about it. So
Mm.
accountability is huge. And professionally, that is one of the biggest things I offer to the financial clients we work with is the accountability to stay on the difficult path. The other thing is when you don't feel like doing it, don't break the streak. And so let's go back to Steve's example of writing the book. So maybe I don't have 20 minutes to write or an hour to write or whatever I've committed to. Maybe I'll write for 5 minutes or for 10 minutes. Jerry Seinfeld, world famous comedian, um, when he might still do it to this day, would write a joke every single day. And I cannot remember the string that he had, how many years that he had, but he said some of the jokes were awful. Some were embarrassing. But the point
mm,
was every single day he wrote a
You
joke.
wrote.
And the only way to produce great content was to produce a lot of garbage content along the way. And I remind my team that
Ah,
too. The only way you're gonna have, or we as a team are gonna come up with great ideas is come up with a lot of bad ones. So it's giving ourselves the freedom to be rubbish, the freedom for us to be awkward, and what we produce might not be great, and we might not be able to spend as much time as we wanted. Um, Not to use, I don't want to overwhelm our audience with workout and fitness stuff, but it's like, okay, maybe I don't have 30 minutes to go work out. So work
mm,
out for 5. Work out,
yeah.
do a set of push-ups and don't break your streak. So if you can't do everything you committed to, at least do something. And you'll be surprised once you start that activity, you'll be surprised that motivation, those feelings, the energy, it might start coming. It won't always, and some days you won't have the time regardless. But one other thing I'll say before getting too long-winded on this is we also need to learn to reward our inputs. And here's what I mean by
mm.
that. We we're in our culture, we reward outcomes. So we celebrate when the book is done, when it gets published, when we retire, when we graduate. What we need to do is celebrate the inputs, the things that nobody sees. It's
Yes.
the practices that happen behind closed doors. Everybody praised Kobe Bryant for the highlight dunks on game day. That came from the hard practice that
Oh, yeah.
nobody saw. And that's what he celebrated. He celebrated the hours he spent in the empty gym. We need to give ourselves a little celebration, maybe even as a treat. I've got a 4-year-old boy who is potty trained. We have 6 kids. They all pee and poop where they're supposed to now. It's great. But
Yay.
but
Congratulations.
a couple years ago, don't worry, I'm going somewhere with this. A couple of years ago, when we were in the process of potty training him, we had little like M&Ms or Skittles or something that would give him a treat with the input, the literal input, right? But the that little 2-year-old that needs that little treat, that affirmation, never
Mm,
goes away. So at 43, at 53, at 83, people still need a little reward to keep them going.
Yes.
But what we need to reward is not the outcome, it's the input. It's the lead measure. It's the typing on the computer. It's the showing up at the gym. Those are the things, not necessarily the outcome. Am I explaining that okay?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that
yes.
resonates with me powerfully. It as it's the things that you're doing in the moment that you need to celebrate, not necessarily what comes on the backside of it after you've done it. It's those in the moment opportunities, in the moment tasks that you're doing that you want to celebrate, because that's where the consistency is built, right, Chad?
It is. And can I give you one more idea on that?
Yes,
And
yes,
and
yes.
And again, consistency is huge. I mean, it's not what you do one day that changes your life. It's the habits, the decisions you make every day that change your future, change your trajectory.
Yeah.
And when it comes to building consistency, if you notice that there are things that are a distraction to you, maybe there's food that's a distraction to you. Maybe it's your a game on your phone or a show on Netflix or scrolling social media. Make that your treat. That, hey, I've got 10 sales calls I need to make. But but, but normally I would procrastinate by watching some reels on Instagram. Okay, I still get to do that. I get to
Yeah.
watch 5 minutes of reels after I make the 10 calls. So what you do is you flip it. You take what used to be the distraction, you make it the reward
Yeah.
for that consistency, but you do the hard thing first. And then you get a little treat afterwards.
Is that what you
Mm.
meant when we said we were talking and when we were building the content of this show? Is that what you meant when you're saying choosing the hard right over the easy wrong?
It's a part of it, yes. And I think asking ourselves that question is, am I choosing the easy wrong? Am I stealing from rather than serving my future self? Now, sometimes that choice in the moment can give you immense pleasure. I mean, it don't there's times where maybe it's spending time with a kid or a loved one, and it's the right thing to do, and it feels awesome. But it's those times when we're at a crossroads, when what we want to do isn't serving ourselves, and what we need to do feels difficult. That's where we need
Mhm.
to ask the question:
Mhm.
Am I choosing the hard right over the easy wrong? Am I serving or stealing from the future version of me?
Wow.
Hmm. Well, okay, last question on my end. I love that, right? I
Me
totally
too.
agree with it. But on someone who said, well, I thought family is supposed to be the priority, but it sounds like I'm prioritizing myself. How can we shift that perspective, Chad?
Well, I believe that I owe it to my family and I owe it to you guys. I owe it to your audience.
Beautiful.
I owe it to
Beautiful.
my clients to be the best version of myself.
Yeah.
And we need to know what those boundaries are. So
Mm,
I can't fill anybody else's cup if my pitcher is empty. So I don't know what that looks like for you, Ernie. I don't know what that looks like for you, Steve. But we need to know the things that sharpen us, that allow us to produce excellence, so we can serve our family with that. So if I only spent time with my family when I was building my business, and right now I'm blessed that I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to do, I get to go to work every day and serve our clients and serve these families. And I choose to continue to do that because it's an example of my kids and it's a great impact. But in the process of building my business, if I only spent time with my family, we would have gone broke. We would have been kicked out of our house and we would have starved. So we can serve our family and still serve our profession and still work on our career and sometimes still take time out for ourselves, because when we get exhausted, when we're burnt out, when we're hitting the wall, we're really not any good to anybody. So we owe it to everybody around us to show up as sharp as we can, to show up with excellence. And sometimes that means taking time out to restore and refine who we are.
beautifully said,
Mm.
Chad. That is so
Mm.
beautiful. I totally agree. And I'm sure, thank you first for an amazing content this morning. I'm sure our
Mm.
listeners are currently wondering what are you working on and how can people reach out to you, Chad?
Well, what I'm working on professionally is making sure that people don't run out of money or purpose in retirement. And I've got a great team around me. And we do all the things that we talked about today, guys. We just do it applying it to finances, helping people come up with the long-term goals for what they want, reverse engineering it to where they are today.
Mhm.
And not just helping people find better investments, but making them better investors and making them better human beings. Because we just I I believe that money is a tool that was given to us to build a better life.
Yes.
It's not the
Agreed.
goal, it's not the objective.
Agreed.
And helping people create better habits around money and create a strategy, not just for money, but what they want their life to look like. That's what I get to do every day,
Mhm.
and it's an absolute blessing. If people want to learn more about that, they can visit veritasalaska.com. We were founded up here in Alaska. We work with folks all over the United States. Don't let the website URL fool you. We're not limited to just Alaska, but veritasalaska.com, and it's veritas.alaska on Instagram, and you can also find me on LinkedIn too.
Man, beautiful.
Thank you so much, Chad. To our listeners as well, if you have a product, service, or rebranding that you're launching in your company, we would love to help you promote it globally. Please contact our producer, Robert Chiolino, at robert.chiolino, Ciolino, at voiceamerica.com for more information.
Hey, Ernie, guess what? A little sneak preview for next week on The Leader's Edge. Dr. Michael Koku, a physician, Maxwell Leadership team member, a motivational speaker, discusses this. Don't leave your dream, live your dream. Tune in next Thursday to The Leader's Edge. And Chad, as always, today you touched my heart, man. You really made a difference in me today. And I want to say thank you for that. And I know you did the same for our listeners. Thank you for today, Chad, so very much.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you again, Chad. And we also wanted to say thank you to all of our listeners and friends because without you, the Leader's Edge would not be possible. We are grateful to have you here and so excited to connect with you next time. But for now,